Donald Trump is again claiming that there's a genocide against Christians going on in Nigeria. Is it true?
Is Donald Trump trying to save Nigerian Christians? Or is this all just a political move for power and resources? Today, we're exposing the truth behind the claims, the lies, and the real battle happening in Nigeria. Across the globe, many people are turning their attention toward Nigeria and praying, as Christian communities face unimaginable violence. Reports from recent months estimate that nearly 3,000 Christians have lost their lives at the hands of extremist militant groups, including Boko Haram. Despite the escalating crisis, critics say the Nigerian government has been slow to respond, prompting a dramatic reaction from former U.S. President Donald Trump. On X, Trump issued a forceful warning, declaring that if Nigeria fails to stop the ongoing killings, the United States will immediately cut off all aid and could even take military action. He stated that he has directed the U.S. Department of Defense to prepare for potential intervention, vowing that any U.S. response would be swift and decisive. His message was clear: Nigeria must act quickly to protect its Christian population. This stance aligns closely with the views of many conservative, evangelical Republicans who see themselves as defenders of persecuted Christians around the world. It also fits into the broader political narrative linking Islamic extremist groups with anti-Christian and anti-Israel sentiment, a position Trump has consistently highlighted. Trump's post sparked major reactions online, including support from rapper Nicki Minaj. Responding to his announcement about addressing the violence in Nigeria, Minaj expressed deep appreciation, saying it reminded her how fortunate people in the U.S. are to worship freely. She emphasized that no group should ever suffer for their beliefs and urged global awareness of religious persecution. She thanked Trump for paying attention to the issue, offered prayers for suffering Christians, and reminded followers not to ignore the suffering of others. However, not everyone welcomed the statements from Trump or Minaj. Their comments stirred backlash from critics who questioned their motives, facts, or political intentions. And that pushback sparked a new wave of debate online.
Heard a lot about Boko Haram operating in northern Nigeria and causing havoc over there. Now, one thing you have to know about northern Nigeria is that much of the population in northern Nigeria is a Muslim population. You know, Nigeria is neighbors with countries like Chad, Niger, and others. There are many in the north. And in the northern parts of Africa, you have larger populations of Arab Africans. And northern Nigeria is no different. Most of the population in northern Nigeria is...
This commenter brings up a powerful point that often gets overlooked. Most of the violence in Nigeria is happening in the northern part of the country. And if we zoom out, we see a familiar pattern across much of Africa. In many Anglophone and Francophone countries, the northern regions tend to have higher Muslim populations. You see it in northern Ghana, northern Nigeria, northern Uganda, and across stretches of North and West Africa. These regions have deep historical ties to Islamic empires and trade routes that shaped their religious and cultural identity centuries, before modern borders even existed. So his argument is simple but meaningful. The attacks we're seeing are happening in a region that is already predominantly Muslim. That matters because the conversation online often frames this situation as extremist Muslims targeting Christians, and only Christians. But if you really study what's happening, the picture is far more complicated. Groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP are not exclusively hunting Christians. They are also killing Muslims, especially those who refuse to obey their extremist ideology or who stand for more moderate, peaceful forms of Islam. They have bombed mosques, assassinated imams, and destroyed countless Muslim villages. In their worldview, disagreement is punishment enough to warrant death. This is an uncomfortable truth for people who want a simple narrative. But Nigeria's reality has never been simple. It's layered with history, politics, ethnic identity, colonial borders, economic desperation, and, yes, religion, but not in the neat Islam versus Christianity box that social media loves to put it in. And this is where the commenter's point hits hard. When we see Western headlines or social media outrage cycles, the suffering of Christians gets spotlighted more frequently. Their stories spread faster. Their names travel further. But what about the Muslim villagers who have also lost their homes? What about the Muslim families who have buried loved ones? What about the Muslim children kidnapped by the same extremists? Their pain does not trend as loudly, even though it is tragically real. His question isn't an attack, it's a plea for fairness. If we are going to mourn victims of terrorism, then mourn all the victims. If we claim to care about human life, then value every human life. Tragedy does not belong to one religion. Loss does not stop at one community's door. Northern Nigeria's story is not a single-direction narrative. It is families, Christian and Muslim, living through chaos, heartbreak, and fear side by side. But beyond religion, this crisis has roots that go far deeper. It stretches into decades of political neglect, youth unemployment, lack of opportunity, and corruption. It stretches into the failure of governments to protect their people and build trust. It stretches into borders drawn during colonial rule that forced rival groups into one nation, creating tension that simmered long after independence. And when extremist ideology finds fertile ground in poverty and frustration, violence grows quickly. This is why oversimplifying the situation becomes dangerous. When foreign leaders, celebrities, or commentators use the crisis to push their own political narrative, whether intentionally or not, it removes complexity from a situation that desperately needs nuanced understanding. It turns Nigerian suffering into talking point fuel, instead of treating it as a human emergency. And here is where the real point lands. Accuracy is not just about fact-checking. It's about justice. When only one group's pain is amplified, the message becomes unbalanced. It tells the world that some victims are more worthy of attention than others, that some suffering deserves sympathy while other suffering gets overshadowed or ignored. Nigeria deserves better than that. Nigerians deserve to be seen in full, their struggles, their resilience, their divisions, and their unity. They deserve a global conversation grounded not in political convenience, but in reality. Because solutions only come from understanding the whole picture, not from repeating the loudest version of it. The tragedy in northern Nigeria is not an easy story. It is not a movie script with one villain and one hero. It is a complicated, painful reality born from history, inequality, extremism, and government failure. Christians have suffered. Muslims have suffered. Innocent families, regardless of faith, have lost everything. And if we are going to talk about Nigeria, if we are going to cry out for justice, if we are going to demand action, then let that call include every victim. Let it include everyone affected by this violence, not just the ones that fit into a ready-made political narrative. Compassion must be whole, not selective. Truth must be full, not convenient, because if we truly want peace, if we truly want justice, then we must first be willing to see the entire truth, even when it does not fit neatly into the story we expected to tell.
Remember about the Chibok girls who were kidnapped. They were kidnapped from an Islamic school for girls. That's where they were kidnapped from. 200 of the girls. Some of them have not yet been found. And you saw those pictures. Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, they were standing out there trying to advocate for the release of these 200 Muslim girls who were kidnapped from an Islamic all-girls school in northern Nigeria. So these Islamic groups are usually attacking their fellow Muslims because those populations are populated highly by Arab Africans, and that's northern Nigeria. So the notion that there's a Christian genocide going on in Nigeria is a lie. It's absolutely bull, because these groups like Boko Haram and others are usually terrorizing their fellow Muslims.
He goes on to stress another layer to this story. Northern Nigeria, where much of the violence is unfolding, is heavily populated by Arab African communities and is predominantly Muslim. Because of that demographic reality, he argues that framing the situation solely as a Christian genocide is misleading. According to him, it's not accurate to portray Christians as the exclusive or primary targets. In fact, extremist groups like Boko Haram have long terrorized Muslim communities as well, and he points to history to back that up. Think back to 2014, the Chibok abductions in Borno State. Boko Haram kidnapped 276 schoolgirls. Some eventually escaped, but many never returned. The crisis became a global headline, especially after Michelle Obama held up the now iconic Bring Back Our Girls sign. It was a moment meant to shine a spotlight on the suffering of innocent victims, who, in that case, were overwhelmingly Muslim. So his argument to Donald Trump is essentially this: if you're calling attention to violence against Nigerian Christians, why ignore the Muslim victims experiencing the same brutality, and sometimes at even larger scales? Do their lives not matter? It's a tough question, and one with weight. You can't dismiss it because he's pointing to documented reality. Muslim communities have been devastated by these militant groups. 2. Still, after that point, other voices jump in, not to counter his facts, but to question Trump's motives entirely.
Same conflict, same killers, and this isn't new. It's chaos that's been brewing for years. Armed groups, gunmen, rogue herders, all moving through gaps that the governments have failed to fill, right? Isn't this the same play that we've seen in Haiti, Sudan, DRC? Convenient? Break the state, then swoop in with a savior story. Why now? Why Nigeria? Well, here's what they're not saying, right? Nigeria's got $40 billion in oil exports, some of the largest gas reserves in Africa, solid minerals, gold, lithium, tin, resources that maybe the US needs, especially in a Cold War with China. And it's not just what's underground, is it? It's the land. The Middle Belt grows the food that feeds the nation, fertile, rain-fed, high yield. And guess where the most violence hits? Right there.
Another perspective circulating online suggests Trump's sudden concern for Nigeria may not be rooted in compassion for Christians at all. Some believe his interest has more to do with Nigeria's valuable natural resources than religious solidarity. And historically, that argument isn't far-fetched. Resource-rich nations like Venezuela and the Democratic Republic of Congo have often found themselves entangled in global power plays disguised as humanitarian concern. This theory leads critics to warn, don't take Trump's message at face value. They argue he, and those cheering him on, may have interests far beyond protecting persecuted believers. And they bring Nicki Minaj into the conversation too, saying she either doesn't understand the complexity of the issue or is pushing her own political agenda. It's not the first time Minaj has publicly praised Trump. Some followers may have missed it, but she has hinted at admiration for him in the past, even during highly public celebrity clashes, like her infamous dispute with Cardi B. She's criticized Democratic figures like Kamala Harris, openly thanked Trump, and made political comments tied to personal celebrity beefs. So when she expressed support again over Nigeria, some people saw it less as concern for victims and more as another pro-Trump stance. But let's take a step back. Nigeria's crisis didn't begin with Minaj's post or Trump's comment. Anyone familiar with Nigeria knows instability has been part of its modern history since independence in 1960. From military coups to leadership struggles, from Obasanjo to Buhari, Babangida to Abacha, power has repeatedly rested in the hands of northern political elites, and the nation has endured waves of conflict and corruption for decades. The core issue isn't Trump speaking up, nor Minaj reacting online. The uncomfortable truth, critics argue, is that Nigeria has long struggled to defend its citizens from extremist groups like Boko Haram. When a foreign leader's threat to pull aid suddenly sparks attention at the highest levels of government, it raises a painful question. Why does outside pressure seem more effective than internal action? Nigeria has produced brilliant, successful people across the globe, in the US, Canada, Europe, East Africa, everywhere. Yet many leave because they feel their own country cannot offer stability or opportunities. And surveys reflect that reality. Asked if they would return to Nigeria, overwhelming numbers of diaspora Nigerians say no. That speaks volumes about the trust gap between citizens and the state. Yes, colonial borders forced diverse ethnic groups into one country. Yes, outside forces have exploited Africa historically and continue to do so today. But the argument being made here is that once a nation claims independence, it must also claim accountability. Freedom means responsibility. You cannot blame outsiders forever while internal leadership fails to protect citizens, resolve divisions, or build functioning systems. This is not an attack on Nigerians. The culture, the brilliance, the diaspora success stories are undeniable. The critique is directed at governance and long-standing structural failures, and the sentiment extends beyond Nigeria. Many Black majority nations face similar challenges. The world is tired of excuses, and whether fair or not, global perception places responsibility on governments to solve internal problems. If they don't, external intervention, political, economic, or even military, fills the vacuum, often making the nation appear weak or dependent. So when Trump threatens intervention and Nigeria suddenly reacts, critics say it reinforces a painful and familiar narrative. The idea that African nations only move when pressured by foreign powers, that sovereignty exists in name but not always in practice. It feeds the perception that Africa must continually be saved by outside forces, whether militarily, economically, or politically. And that narrative is not only outdated, it is deeply damaging. It undermines dignity. It chips away at national pride. It subtly implies that African states cannot solve their own problems or lead their own futures without Western guidance or intervention. For many, that implication stings more than any political argument ever could. Because when a country appears unable or unwilling to act decisively until a foreign voice speaks, it gives ammunition to those who believe Africa is perpetually dependent, waiting to be rescued, unable to take full command of its destiny. And no matter how well-intended an outside voice may seem, the message that follows is rarely empowering. Instead, it echoes the old colonial script: you cannot govern yourselves. You need us. In reality, Nigeria is not weak because its people are incapable. Quite the opposite. Nigerians are known worldwide for their intelligence, entrepreneurial spirit, resilience, cultural influence, and ambition. From business and entertainment to academia and technology, Nigerians excel everywhere they go. But global perception doesn't judge nations by the brilliance of their citizens abroad. It judges by the strength and stability of their. And when instability persists, when citizens flee seeking opportunity elsewhere, when security and foreign leaders step in to correct the situation, reputation suffers. In the end, if Nigeria, or any independent nation, wants respect and stability, it must secure its own future, protect its people, and govern effectively. Independence is not only a declaration, it is a responsibility. It demands self-determination, self-correction, and self-accountability. And those things are never easy. Nation building is hard, messy, painful work. But it must be done from within. Outsiders may interfere, may exploit weakness, or may pretend to act out of concern. But external help always comes with interests attached. Political interests, economic interests, strategic interests. Global powers do not invest without expecting return. So while international attention may bring temporary relief or pressure, it cannot serve as a long-term foundation for national stability. The responsibility to defend a nation, develop its systems, and protect its future rests ultimately with its leadership, and with citizens who demand better. This moment, then, becomes a true crossroads. Nigeria, like many nations with complex histories and diverse populations, must decide whether to lean on outside saviors or rise through internal strength and conviction. The choice is more than political. It is philosophical. It asks whether a nation believes in its own capacity to heal, to build, and to lead. It asks whether the people see themselves as subjects waiting for rescue or as architects of their own destiny. That decision shapes not only the present crisis, but the narrative future generations inherit. Because true sovereignty is not measured by symbolic independence, a flag raised high, an anthem sung with pride. Those are expressions of statehood, but they are not the substance of strength. Sovereignty means confronting real problems instead of burying them under political speeches. It means standing up to corruption even when the corrupt hold power. It means strengthening institutions so they serve the people instead of a few elites. And it requires empowering citizens, not just through slogans and ceremonies, but by giving them security, opportunity, education, justice, and dignity. A nation becomes strong when its people believe in it, not because foreign nations applaud, but because citizens trust their leaders, their systems, and the future being built. But when a country only moves, when outsiders apply pressure, when international headlines become the trigger for domestic action, then that nation's strength is conditional. Borrowed pride, temporary resolve, dependent confidence. If a nation is only strong when the world is watching, then it is not truly strong. It is performing strength rather than living it. Real power is internal. It does not need applause, nor does it crumble under silence. It grows from discipline, from accountability, from leaders willing to sacrifice personal comfort for national progress. It grows from the willingness of citizens to demand better, to participate, to hold institutions to standards, rather than accepting excuses. That kind of strength cannot be imposed from abroad. It must rise from within, and that is where dignity lies, not in being rescued, not in being pitied, not in accepting the role of the perpetual victim in the global theater of politics. Dignity comes from standing firm, from correcting course, from refusing to be defined by crisis. It comes from proving through consistent action, year after year, that a nation can protect its own people, secure its borders, deliver justice, and build a future worthy of its potential. For Nigeria, and for any nation, the aspiration is not merely survival, it is excellence. It is stability rooted in fairness. It is progress grounded in unity, not division. It is leadership that governs with responsibility rather than reaction. A nation fulfills its promise when it transforms challenge into growth rather than allowing struggle to define its identity. The world may offer concern, criticism, or even assistance. But the world cannot give Nigeria greatness. Only Nigerians can do that. And when a country chooses to rise through its own strength, rather than waiting for external intervention, it not only secures its present, it honors its future.